Now we're going to go into our starts of the week, and we're going to start with the quarterback section. I'm going to start with my quarterback this week, who will be Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who's facing the Detroit Lions this week. Now, to say he's been on fire would be an absolute understatement. Over the last 6 games, he actually finished as the QB1 5 times. And in that stretch, he's been QB11 in fantasy points per game. Since week 9, he's scored in PFS passing grade 10th in yards attempt and second in big time throw rate. Lawrence is actually a strong QB1 this week against a weak line secondary who, from week 7, have actually been the 30th in pass yards per game, 20th in EPA per dropback, and 31st in explosive pass rate. If there is ever a time to cash in on this man's talent, it's now, as we get to the business end of the season. So that's why this week I've gone with Trevor Lawrence for my QB start of the week. Jay, who have you got?
Well, I'll take your Trevor Lawrence and I'll raise you a prodigal son that is Deshaun Watson. Now, I'm gonna give you an illustration as to what happened. A story, actually not an illustration, an experience of an old flatmate of mine, and I think it alludes to what happened with Deshaun Watson. Now, this particular flatmate, let's call his name, or roommate as you guys call it over the pond. Let's call in my bachelor days. Let's call this guy Mike. So Mike was a nurse in a very high profile private medical facility that helped with rehabbing high profile patients. Now, this was about 12 years ago, and a very famous soccer goalkeeper got injured in a game and was carted off. He was knocked unconscious. I think his spine was affected, or he was concussed, all of that stuff. And he happened to be on the same ward where my friend, my roommate, was attending to. And my roommate was part student, part nurse. Now, this all ties in at the end, so just follow me on this. He looked after this guy. He was in charge of him. He ended up doing such a fantastic job that the guy was so impressed that the soccer keeper left Mike a tip of what would be the equivalent today of $1,000, because yeah, these soccer players are loaded over. Problem was, my flatmate or my roommate was at college or university on that day. The following day, he was actually coming back to work. So he gets back to work, and his manager, or the ward manager, or whatever she was called, comes up to him and says, "Oh, by the way, the soccer player, he said he left you with a fantastic review and he left you with a tip." Now, mind you, over here in the UK, tipping is not a big deal. It doesn't happen very often. However, she said to my roommate, Mike, "Oh, but I didn't keep the tip for you. I put it in a pot and I donated it to this charity. Because you're a student, you don't need the money." He said, "What? I'm a student. How can you tell me what I need?" And he said that he nearly saw red and he had to storm off because he was going to, dare I say, choke the person. So again, how does that link in with Deshaun Watson? Well, you think about Deshaun Watson and you think about what happened to him back in 2020 in the offseason when DeAndre Hopkins was traded. It wasn't even the fact that DeAndre Hopkins was traded. It was the fact that they traded him for basically peanuts. And Bill O'Brien left that organization burning like the Joker did in The Dark Knight in that hospital. I just think of that meme. But you see that tweet that Deshaun Watson made in that time. 2 out of 10, he went from in anger to 10 out of 10, right? This is after he found out what the Texans got for DeAndre Hopkins. Now, the question I asked you, Chenna, was who was their running back? Do you remember? Who were their running backs? Because we saw them in Wembley, didn't we? Who were at the game.
It was Duke Johnson. I think he had a good game on that day. And I can't remember the other one. I think, was it David Johnson?
Yeah, so it was Johnson and Johnson, right? They were washed, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Right. So now, how does this pertain to fantasy? Well, he's facing the Houston Texans in Texas this weekend. Houston are 4th against the quarterback, but they're 30th ranked versus the pass. Why is that important? Well, before his exit, should we say, from the league for purposes that we're not going to discuss, Deshaun Watson had the most passing yards in 2020 and the most yards per attempt in 2020. He was the second highest in passer rating, and he didn't have an elite O-line. What does he have at the Browns? Elite O-line, tick, right? Elite running back, tick. Not only does he have an elite running back, he has the league's #1 rushing running back in Nick Chubb. Oh, and for good measure, throw in a Kareem Hunt as well, who's no slouch himself. Does he have a #1 wide receiver? Remember, he lost DeAndre Hopkins? Yes, he does. He has Amari Cooper. Does he have a viable #2 threat in a Robin? Yes, he has. Peoples-Jones. Does he even have a tight end? Yes, he has. David Njoku. The guy has a stacked team. I'm going with Deshaun Watson, my fantasy pick. Prodigal son returns. I think he has a monster game. And just in case you forgot, and a bleep you moment to those Houston Texans in his house, in that NRG stadium, he goes and he balls out. Deshaun Watson is my quarterback of this week.
That is a very great, that's actually a really good pick. And I love the analogy earlier on there. My only thing with Deshaun Watson is, again, I think we've seen, we know he's we know how good a quarterback he is. We know what he's been in the past and what he can do, and obviously the Browns have compensated him accordingly. But what we do know now is that he's only not started a game in almost 2 years. I mean, the NFL waits for no man, and even if it is Deshaun Watson, as talented as he is there a situation where he could be rusty? I mean, if you're a fantasy manager or someone that's got him, do you pick him because of that? I know you started the week. I mean, do you take into consideration that risk factor against Houston, or are you saying just go bombs away, just straight in?
I think you have to go bombs away straight in, simply because the rust comes in, I think, more so with these quarterbacks with regards to not just the timing, because he's had time to train with them, and then obviously he had that ban where he couldn't train with them. So he's trained with this receiver since, I don't know, the last 3-4 weeks, I think, I believe, right? He's been allowed into the Browns facilities. However, I think the rust comes in with the timing, because the players always speak about the game speed.
Yeah.
However,
absolutely.
what negates the game speed?
Obviously,
the game speed being a pass rush. What negates that, or what buys time?
A very good run game.
And
a very good O-line.
There you go. He has both.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if anything else, if he starts to get field of pressure, he can literally hand it off to the league's best rusher. 100%. And so this is where I think that gives him the cushion. I can see him, and I take your point, Uchenna. I can see him looking a bit rusty in the first quarter, but by the second half, we know that Deshaun Watson is a late game sort of player. I mean, he even used to get a lot of garbage yards, if you remember, while he was playing, right? And he's a bit of a slow burner, and I can see him mid third to fourth quarter turning on the fireworks and really going bombs away at that point, especially against this defense as well, which is porous at best. And we saw what the Miami Dolphins did to them. I think with a chip on his shoulder, if there was one game that he circled in his calendar for the last 18 months he's been out, is this game. And I just think in his building, to have a feel, the atmosphere, the weather, the animosity, the adversity, the vitriol as far as the organization and the the front office staff, sorry, I beg your pardon. I personally believe that he's going to have a vendetta against them. And I think there's a lot to be said about motivation and morale, and I think that's going to spur him on, given his eliteness as a quarterback.
Definitely. I think those will definitely take into consideration as well. We also need to remember that the Houston Texans are conveniently 30th against the run. So expect a heavy dose of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt this week. And again, as you mentioned, that's 100% going to help Deshaun Watson kind of get back used to the NFL after been away for 2 years. That's our picks for QB. Let us know who you're going to pick in the comments. Like and subscribe, and let us know the situation, and let us know who you've picked.
Exactly. Let us know everything, and tweet us as well at call_huddle on Twitter. And tell us who your picks are, and let's talk about it in the comment section.